Hello there, everyone. I am the Soul Collector, and this is internet quality. Well, would you look at that? It's only the second episode, and I'm already doing a big one. One of the most infamously awful stories ever created. This thing is so famously bad that it's already been looked over by Yuri of Wind and Michael Leroy. Though I'm going to tackle it too because, one, I don't feel that their comments are enough to make mine redundant, at least not in their entirety, and two, well, what I plan to cover in my next episode. This story was originally posted to the Creepypasta wiki, but was removed for not being good enough to meet its standards. Unfortunately, it's not disappeared entirely. After all, that would be merciful. No, it now resides, among other places, on the Trollpasta wiki. What's more, unfortunately for every single conscious being in the entire universe, this thing is actually quite famous, very well known, and very influential. At least from what I hear, for a long time, this story had a rather large fan base, to the point where a game was even made based on it. Fortunately, its fanbase seems to have died down, and most people don't really like it anymore. Unfortunately, that didn't happen before this story had the chance to define the bad video game creepypasta, and have heavy influence on future entries into that genre. Either that, or these scares are so obvious that they show up in countless places independently, which is actually quite a legitimate possibility. Really, it's probably a combination of the two. Regardless, this story is by J.C. the Hyena. It has no preamble, and thus shall now begin. Who knows, maybe it won't be as bad as people have let on. After all, how bad can the opening sentence to a story possibly be?
I'm a total Sonic the Hedgehog fan, much like everyone else. I like the newer games, but I don't mind playing the classics.
Wow. Wow. That was... How did you do that? That sentence was so poorly constructed that I literally do not know what's wrong with it, because I cannot tell what it is trying to say. There are two possible readings of that sentence, both of which render it grammatically incorrect. He could be saying that he, along with every single human being in the world, is a total Sonic the Hedgehog fan. Then, after a comma splice, saying that he likes the newer games but doesn't mind playing the classics. He could also be saying that he's a total Sonic the Hedgehog fan, then failing to use any kind of punctuation to show that he's moved on to a new sentence, in which he states that he, along with every single human being ever, prefers modern Sonic games to classic ones. Either way, there's at least one punctuation error, and one absolutely ridiculous statement about all of humanity having the same tastes as him.
I don't think I've ever played glitchy or hacked games before, though I don't think I want to play any after the experience I had. It started on a nice summer afternoon. I was playing Sonic Unleashed. I liked how you get to explore the towns in it.
Hey, did you know that not adding random irrelevant details into your story and or essay is one of the first things that they teach you in, elementary school English class?
Until I noticed out of my peripheral vision that the mailman had arrived and put something in my mailbox as usual and left. I paused my game to go see what I got in the mail, ... The only thing in the mailbox was a CD case for computers.
Which was disappointing. He'd ordered a CD case for turnips.
And a note. I took it inside.
Why isn't any of this in any kind of envelope?
I looked at the note first and realized it was from my dear friend Kyle. Let's just call him that.
His real name is Gertrude, but he's gone by Kyle ever since the Great Burrito War of 2006.
Whom I hadn't heard from in 2 weeks. I know that because I recognized his handwriting, though what was weird was how it looked. It looked badly written and scratchy and somewhat difficult to read, as if Kyle was having a hard time writing it down and did it in a hurry.
So, you can recognize his handwriting, but it looked different than usual. That could potentially be altered into something that made sense, but as of now, it doesn't.
This is what he wrote. Tom, I can't take it anymore. I had to get rid of this thing somehow before it was too late. I was hoping you'd do it for me. I can't do it. He's after me. And if you don't destroy this CD, he'll come after you too. He's too fast for me. ... Please, Tom, destroy this godforsaken disc before he comes after you too. It's too late for me. Destroy the disc and you'll destroy him. But do it quick, otherwise he'll catch you. Don't even play the game. It's what he wants. Just destroy it. Please. Kyle.
So, Kyle was able to get this disc into a case, write a note about it, and put both of those items into a mailbox, but he wasn't able to snap the disc in half. Also, given what we'll learn later, why wasn't the package intercepted by the thing chasing him? I can think of possible answers to that last question, but the story doesn't address this point at all, so I'm just gonna call it a plot hole.
Well, that was certainly weird. Even though Kyle is my best friend and I haven't seen him in 2 weeks, I didn't do what he asked me. I didn't think that a simple gaming disc would do anything bad to him. After all, it's just a game, right? Boy, was I wrong about that. ... Anyway, I looked at the disc and it looks like any ordinary computer CDR disc, except it had black marker on it written Sonic.exe. And it was unlike Kyle's handwriting, meaning that he must have gotten it from somewhere else, like a pawn shop or eBay. When I saw Sonic on the writing of the CD, I was actually excited and wanted to play it, since I'm a big Sonic fan.
Hold on one moment. Alright then, can I get your address? I have a package for you.
I went up to my room and turned on my computer and put the disc in and installed the game.
Do we need to have a talk about commas?
When the title screen popped up, I noticed that it was the first Sonic game. I was like, awesome, because like I said earlier, I liked the classics. The first thing I noticed that was out of place was when I pressed start. Theirs was a split second when I saw the title image turned into something much different, something that I now consider horrifying.
Not so much when you first saw it, but now, on reflection.
Before cutting to black, I remember what the image looked like in that split second before the game cut to black. The sky had darkened, the title emblem was rusted and ruined, the Sega 1991 was now instead Sega 666, and the water had turned red, like blood, except it looked hyper-realistic.
If you will indulge a brief tangent, the phrase hyper-realistic generally refers to a property some sculptures have. For it to be hyper-realistic, it must be that, for example, if you were to touch the sculpture, it would have the same texture as whatever the sculpture depicted. Then again, I have seen photorealistic paintings described as hyper-realistic, so are you saying that the blood was photorealistic? Why not just use the word photorealistic? Is it because you were too dumb to think of it? Or were you actually proposing that the blood was so real that if you were to touch the screen, you would feel like dripping and wetness on your hands?
But the freakiest thing that was in that split-second frame was Sonic. His eyes were pitch black and bleeding, with 2 glowing red dots staring right at me!
They were staring right at him! The at-himness was direct. There was not the slightest deviation between the place the red dots were looking and the place where he was, for they were the same thing.
And his smile had stretched wider up to the edge of his face. I was rather disturbed about that image when I saw it, though I figured that it was just a glitch and forgot about it.
An 8-bit game displays photorealistic or nearly so graphics, and you dismiss it as a glitch. I mean, a hacked game could conceivably contain something that exceeded the technical limitations of the game being modified, but a glitch?
After it cut to black, it stayed like that for about 10 seconds or so. Then another weird thing happened. The save file select from Sonic the Hedgehog 3 popped up, and I was like, WTF? What's this doing in the first Sonic game? Anyway, then I noticed something off. The background was the dark, cloudy sky of the bad Stardust Speedway level from Sonic CD, and there were only 3 save files. The music was that creepy Caverns of Winter music from Earthbound.
Because why defile one franchise when you can defile 2?
Only it was extended and seemed to have been in reverse.
Then how did you immediately recognize it?
And the image for the save file where you see a preview of the level you're on is just red static for all 3 files. What freaked me out more was the character select. It showed only Tails, Knuckles, and to my surprise, Dr. Robotnik. Now I was sure something was up. I mean, how could you play as Robotnik in a classic Sonic game, for crying out loud? When I realized this wasn't a glitchy game, it was a hacked game.
So, the hyper-realistic blood, save files, and character select screen didn't tip you off, but playing as a villain in a classic Sonic game? OMG and FW!
Yeah, it definitely looked hacked. It was really creepy. But as a smart gamer... I wasn't scared, or at least I tried not to be. Anyways, shaking off the creeped out feeling, I picked file 1 and chose Tails, and when I selected and got started...
That would be I, not and.
The game froze for about 5 seconds, and I heard a creepy pixelated laugh that sounded an awful lot like that Kefka guy from Final Fantasy before cutting to black.
Do you happen to know what a comma is? See, I know you do, because in other places where it's grammatically incorrect to use them, you use them willy-nilly. But apparently you looked at that sentence and were just like, nah, I'm not gonna put a comma there, even though grammar says I have to, or the sentence will say that I was what cut to black.
The screen stayed black for about 10 seconds or more.
Alright, I've avoided this joke up till now, because everyone's already made it, but seriously, how are you getting these exact time estimates? Are you using a stopwatch? Are you a stopwatch? You're much dumber than most stopwatches.
Then it showed the typical level title thing, except the simplistic shapes were different shades of red, and the text showed only Hill Act 1.
Missing words! The horror! The unspeakable horror!
The screen faded in and the level title vanished, revealing Tails in the Green Hill Zone from Sonic 1. The music was different though. It sounded like a peaceful melody in reverse.
Did you seriously just rip off Been Drowned? You shouldn't have done that.
Anyway, I just started playing and had Tails start running like you would in any of the classic Sonic games. What was odd was that as Tails was running along the level, there was nothing but flat ground and a few trees for 5 minutes.
And that wasn't enough time for you to give up. Also, spoiler alert, the comma that ended that quote is at the end of a sentence, meaning that we have ourselves a comma splice.
That was when the peaceful music started to lower down into slow, deep tones very slowly as I kept going. I suddenly saw something and I stopped to see what it was. It was one of the small animals lying dead on the ground bleeding. That was when the music started to slow down.
Then why did you describe that before? Were you not aware that you could go back and change things when you were writing a story?
Tails had a shocked and saddened look on his face that I never saw him have before, so I had him move along and he kept that worried look on his face.
Because why describe the face when you can just tell the reader how it's supposed to make them feel? You know, as I write this script, I'm becoming increasingly aware that I'm going to go insane if I point out everything wrong with this story. However, because I want to put how truly bad this is into perspective, because I want to make it clear for all of you to understand, I am going to point out everything I can find fault with in the next little bit of it.
As he kept moving,
much like with began to weep last time, kept moving is redundant. Moved or ran will do.
I saw more dead animals as Tails moved past them.
We've already established that Tails was moving, so there's no need to point out that he was moving past them.
Looking more and more worried.
Once again, please tell us what his face looks like rather than how we should feel about it. Instead of saying that he looked worried, describe his eyes widening, or his jaw dropping, or even him tearing up.
As the music lowers and he moves past more dead animals.
That's a tense swap, and since you're about to begin a new sentence, that comma at the end is another comma splice.
I was shocked to see how they all died.
Much like with Tails' face before, you need to show us your reaction rather than telling us how you feel. Say, my eyes widened, or my jaw dropped, or something else along those lines. Also, that sentence ends with another comma splice.
They looked like somebody killed them in rather gruesome ways.
That's like somebody had killed them. It's the difference between past perfect and past imperfect tense.
A squirrel was hanged.
Hung.
On a tree with what appeared to be his entrails hanging out. A bunny had all 4 of his limbs torn off, and a duck had his eyes gouged out and his throat slit.
Hey, look at that! Another comma splice!
I felt sick to my stomach when I saw this massacre.
There's no need to tell us that that's when. We can work it out by the fact that that's what's happening when you say that.
And apparently so did Tails.
How do you know? What was his facial expression like? What was his body language like? It's called show, don't tell. Show us how the character is feeling. Don't tell us how the character is feeling. Don't tell us how we should feel.
After a few more seconds, there were no more animals, and the music seemed to have stopped. I still kept Tails to continue.
Lastly, seemed to have is redundant. That's a comma splice, and I still kept Tails to continue is not a sentence.
After a minute passed after the music stopped.
That reads very awkwardly.
Tails was running up a hill, and then he stopped. It wasn't until I saw why.
What wasn't until you saw why? Nowhere in the text of this story is the answer to that question found.
Sonic was there on the other side of the screen with his back against Tails with his eyes closed. Tails looked happy to see Sonic, but then his smile faltered.
It faltered. Did you just show something? Did you just include a description of a facial expression? Hallelujah! It's a miracle! Praise Mortis for his mercy and wisdom!
Obviously noticing that Sonic wasn't responding to him, if not acting as if he was totally oblivious of Tails' presence.
Wouldn't those be the same thing?
Tails walked slowly towards Sonic, and I noticed that I wasn't even moving my keyboard to make him move, so this had to have been a cutscene. Suddenly, I began to have a growing feel of dread as Tails walked closer to Sonic to get his attention. I felt that Tails was in danger and something bad was going to happen. I heard faint static growing louder as Tails was but inches away from Sonic and stopped and stuck his hand out to touch him. That foreboding feeling in my gut was growing stronger. I felt the urge to tell Tails to get away from Sonic as the static grew louder.
But you didn't, because you understand the difference between fact and fiction.
Suddenly, in a split second, I saw Sonic's eyes open, and they were black with those glowing red dots, just like that title image. Thought there wasn't a smile. When that happened, the screen turned black and the static sound was off. It stayed black for about 7 seconds.
Insert joke about stopwatches here.
And then white text appeared, forming a message saying, "Hello, do you want to play with me?" At this point, I was creeped out. I didn't want to continue with the game, but my curiosity got the better of me when I was taken to a different level, with the level title now saying, "Hide and Seek." This time, I was in the Angel Island level from Sonic 3, and it looked like everything was on fire. Tails looked as though he was scared out of his wits this time. He actually looked at me and made frantic gestures to me as if he wanted to get out of the area he was in as fast as possible. I was starting to get freaked out by this, ... I mean, Tails was actually breaking the fourth wall, trying to tell me to get him out of there.
You know, I originally planned to make a joke here about the show don't tell rule, but then I realized that you do describe Tails making, quote, frantic gestures, which probably does count as showing. So good on you, then. I think that's the second time you've done that.
So I pressed down on the arrow key as hard as I could and made him run as fast as he could. A pixelated version of that creepy theme when you meet Shadow at the Ark as Robotnik from Sonic Adventure 2 was playing as I made Tails trek through the desolate forest, trying to help him escape from whatever he was trying to run from. Suddenly, I heard that creepy laugh again, ... That awful Kefka laugh, ... Right after 10 seconds have passed as I helped Tails run through the forest, and then I started seeing flashes of Sonic popping everywhere on the screen, again with those black and red eyes. The music changed to that suspenseful drowning jingle as I see Sonic behind Tails slowly gaining up on him, flying! Sonic wasn't running, he was actually flying!
Oh my god, flying?!
The flying pose his sprite was making looked very similar to Metal Sonic's flying pose in Sonic CD, except it was just Sonic and he had the black and red eyes again, only...
And then it goes to a new paragraph mid-sentence.
This time he had the most deranged-looking grin on his face.
Hey look! Another comma splice!
He then looked as though he was enjoying the torment he was giving the poor little fox as he gained up on him. Suddenly, when Tails tripped, another cutscene, the music stopped and Sonic vanished. Tails laid there and started crying for 15 seconds.
Apparently, he just couldn't finish starting and actually move on to crying already.
The scene was rather upsetting to watch, and I kind of teared up myself.
There's a dirty joke to be made somewhere here, but I can't quite put my finger on it.
But then Sonic appeared right in front of Tails, and Tails looked up in horror. Blood started to come down from those blackened eyes of Sonic's, as a grin slowly grew from his face as he looked down at the horrified fox. I could do nothing but watch. Just in a split second, Sonic lunged at Tails right before the screen went black. There was a loud screeching noise that only lasted 5 seconds. The text returned only this time. It said, "You're too slow. Want to try again?" And then that god-awful laugh came with it.
So the message came, and then the laugh came, implying that the laugh came after the message, but the laugh came with the message.
I was also shocked by what had happened, ... Did Sonic murder Tails? No, he couldn't have ... He and Tails are supposed to be best friends, right? Why did Sonic do that to him?
Because this is a cliched creepypasta. The main character has to go around killing everyone, otherwise you'd risk coming up with something original.
I shook the shock off as I was brought back to the character select. The save file that had Tails was different. Tails was no longer in the box itself, but in the TV screen itself, which was flickering with that red static. Tails' expression scared me. His eyes were black and bleeding, his orange fur had gone black, and he had an expression of anguish on his face. Trying to ignore it, I picked Knuckles next.
Ladies and gentlemen, did you notice what was wrong with that paragraph? You didn't. I see. Well, allow me to fill you in. Every single place in that entire paragraph that should have had a period had a comma splice instead. Every sentence except the last one ended with a comma. 5 of them. In a row.
The laugh came again, and the screen cut to black again and stayed there for another 10 seconds. This time the level said, "You can't run!"
That's right, everyone. It's not that the title was You Can't Run. I'm sorry, You Can't Run. It's that the level itself said, You can't run. This pasta is breaking new ground. Or is it wind? I really can't tell.
I was really freaked out by now. I couldn't really tell if this was a glitch.
How? How could you not tell that this wasn't a glitch? What, are you stupid or something? Oh, right, I forgot. Carry on, then.
Or a hack, or some kind of sick twisted joke, ... or anything really. But despite my fear of what happened next, I kept playing. The next level looked much different. It had the ground of the Scrap Brain Zone, but the sky background looked like the main menu. It had the dark reddish cloudy sky. But it was the music that creeped me out the most. It sounded like Gygas' theme right after you eat Pokey in Earthbound. I also noticed that Knuckles looked afraid just like Tails did, though not as much. More rather, he looked a little unnerved.
What the fuck does more rather mean? I mean, other than that you're a terrible writer.
He broke the fourth wall just like Tails and looked as if he wasn't sure about going on, but I made him move anyway. He ran down the straight pathway in this dark level, and as he did, the screen started to flicker red static a couple of times, and then that maddening laugh came again. Then, after a few seconds of running, I noticed several bloodstains on the metallic ground. I felt a growing sense of fear again, thinking something horrible is going to happen to Knuckles. He looked nauseated walking down this blood-stained road, but I still kept him going. Suddenly, as Knuckles ran, Sonic appeared right in front of him, with those black and red eyes, and then red static appeared again when the static vanished, showing nothing but black screen with text saying, "Found you!"
Demon Sonic had recently gotten a concussion from a particularly rough visit to Anthrocon.
I was now scared.
Not so much before this point, but starting right about now...
Sonic found Knuckles already? What was going on?
You're playing a hacked video game.
Anyway, red static came again, and then I was back to the level. Knuckles looked like he was panicking, and Sonic was nowhere to be found. At this time, that high-pitched squealing from Silent Hill 1's final boss was playing. Was this some kind of boss battle with Sonic? I hope to God it wasn't, honestly. Suddenly, Sonic appeared right behind Knuckles in what appeared to be pixelated black smoke. I made Knuckles turn and then punch Sonic, but Sonic vanished in black pixelated smoke before I could even land a hit. That terrible laugh went off again. Then Sonic appeared behind Knuckles again, and then I made him punch again, and Sonic vanished again, laughing.
As Albert Einstein once said, the definition of insanity is reading this story over and over again expecting it to stop sucking. This is also the cause of insanity.
Knuckles was panicking even more, and even I felt like I was going crazy. Sonic was practically playing with us. He was playing a sick, twisted little mind game with me and Knuckles. Another cutscene played as Knuckled.
I could proofread this story before posting it to Creepypasta Wiki. Or I could try to beat my grandma's high score on level 100 of Candy Crush.
To his knees and clutched his head sobbing. I felt his agony. Sonic was actually driving us both crazy. And then in a split second, Sonic lunged at Knuckles, and the screen went black with another distorted screeching noise that lasted for at least 3 seconds. Another text message appeared. So many souls to play with. So little time. Would you agree? What the hell? ... Just what is going on?
You're still playing a hacked video game.
I started to think Sonic was actually trying to talk to me through the game ... But I was too scared to think that.
How can you be too scared to think something?
I was brought back to the main menu, and this time the second file box had Knuckles in the TV screen. His red fur had darkened to a reddish gray. His dreadlocks were dripping with blood, and his eyes were black and bleeding too, and he had a look of sadness on his face.
A look of sadness, because why show us how we should feel? That takes work! It's much easier to just be lazy and save your creative energy for figuring out inventive ways to finally take that woman's 400,000 and pounded it to not the high score anymore bits!
I began to think that those are the actual characters trapped in those TV screens on the save files, but I couldn't believe it, ... I didn't want to believe it, ...
Yes, you couldn't, because you're a mature, rational, reasonably intelligent... Wait, no you're not. Never mind then.
So I shut off the game and took a break.
And speaking of breaks, I think it's time we take one of our own. Holy crap, that thing is awful. Maybe I can find a way to get away with never finishing it.
Hey, dude, you alright?
No, of course I'm not alright. I'm not supposed to be alright. That's the whole point of this. I deserve everything I get.
Well, yeah, I guess technically, but... never mind.
Hey, Lauro?
Yeah?
I want to thank you again for sticking with me through this.
Well, I couldn't just leave you, could I?
I don't know. I mean, you'd probably be better off if you had. You'd be out there, working with another collector, probably. Getting to do your job. What you were made for. Unlike me, right now, here.
This is what I was made for.
Reading bad internet stories? I'm pretty sure that's not what you were made for.
No, helping you out, however I can. I can't think of any familiars who'd do anything different if their collectors did the same thing you did.
Maybe. Still, you should at least be out and about when I don't need you to read stories.
Where would I go?
I don't know, explore the universe. Find someone else who needs your help. I want you to. It'll make it easier, knowing that you're not always here, suffering for what I did.
I'm not sure I want to leave you alone here, I mean...
I'll be fine. At least as fine as I would be anyways. I'll tell you what, how about we finish the story, and then you go and see if there's really life under Europa's ice, okay?
Oh, alright, if that's what you want.
It is.
Well, thanks, I guess.
No problem. Well then, back to the story.
I took a nap. Wish I hadn't, cause I then began to have the most disturbing nightmare. I was in pitch black darkness, though I was under the light given off by a lamp that hung high above my head.
Because explicit contradictions are fun!
I could hear the cries of Knuckles and Tails nearby. They were saying stuff like, "Help us, ... and "Why did you give us to him?" and "Run away before he gets you too, ... Their cries died out as I then heard Sonic laugh. His laugh, ... It sounded a lot like the distorted Kefka laugh.
Then how did you know it was him? We've established that you can't see anything. Did you figure out later that it was Sonic? You don't say that you figured out later that it was Sonic.
You're a lot fun to play with, kid. Just like your friend Kyle, though he didn't last long.
Do you know what? Sometimes you have to have the dignity to look low-hanging fruit in the eye and say, you may be the easiest possible joke to make, but today I'm going to pass you by, because I want to give the people something more creative, original, and interesting. However, this is not one of those times.
I was scared and looking around for the source of the voice. Won't be long now until you join him and all my other friends.
BDSM dungeon! Excuse me. I'm sorry.
Hey, you don't have lungs.
Shut up, Lauro.
I saw him walking toward me, flickering in and out in several directions. You can't run, kid. You're in my world now, just like the others. When he grabbed me and I saw his bleeding black and red-eyed grinning face, I woke up with a fright. After a couple of hours, I decided to continue playing the game. I don't know why, but I had to know. I had to figure out why this was happening.
So, you don't know why you felt the need to continue the game after a couple of hours, but you know and say in the story that it was because you were curious. Also, just to briefly satisfy that curiosity, your friend gave you a hacked game disc and you had a nightmare about it. That's all there is to this. That's all that you have any reason to believe that there is to this.
So I turned on the computer, turned on the game, and selected Robotnik next. I still thought that was wacky, playing as Dr. Robotnik. But anyway, the level title appeared again, and this time it said ... which I found really freaky.
Indeed, if there's one thing I've learned from creepypasta, it's that the ellipsis is the most terrifying thing in the English language. Hey, get that away from me!
This time I was in some kind of hallway. Didn't really look like it was from any of the classic Sonic games, though it has the pixelated style. The floor was shiny and checkered. The walls were a dark grayish purple with animated candle lights and a few dark bloodstains here and there. And there was a dark red curtain hanging above the top of the screen. Every 12 seconds or so, the red curtain sways very slowly, but whenever you're playing the game, you can barely see it move. The music was oddly pleasant, a piano playing a rather sad yet peaceful song, but I knew better. This was the song that played in Hill Act 1, only it wasn't in reverse.
It wasn't in reverse. It wasn't. So it was playing normally. Ooh, spooky!
Robotnik didn't look entirely nervous.
What the fuck does that mean? Like, how can you be partially nervous? There are varying degrees of nervousness, but you either are nervous or you aren't.
Like Tails and Knuckles did, but he did have a suspicious look on his face as if he was just a bit paranoid.
How is that different from being nervous?
He did a little animation when I just left him standing. He turns his head to the left and then to the right at least twice and then shrugs at me, as if he has no idea where he was or what was going on. Even though I was scared out of my mind about what was going to happen, I had Robotnik continue onward. He did his usual running animation, you know, when you've beaten him at the end of a classic Sonic game and you chase him, as we continued going through the hallway. Then I stop at the long flight of stairs leading downward. Now I was nervous. Even Robotnik seemed unsure of himself, though I pressed onward. As I led Robotnik down the stairs, I noticed that the walls have gotten darker and more reddish. The red torches are now in eerie blue. Then we landed onto another hallway. This one was longer than the last one, or at least it felt like it. And then we headed down another flight of stairs down.
Hold on, maybe if I use another jellyfish.
This one was much longer, took at least 1 full minute. And then I heard that horrid Kefka laugh again, and then the music slowly faded until it was quiet. As it did, the walls turned more dark red, and the torches were a black flame now. When Robotnik landed onto the third hallway, I noticed he now looked really creeped out. Though he tried to hide it, I couldn't blame him. I was scared too. Suddenly, Sonic popped right in front of Robotnik the same way he did Knuckles and then Red Static. The red static lasted for about 15 seconds, and then it showed me a most unpleasant image, ... The image showed a hyper-realistic of Sonic.
You can kiss a hyper-realistic of my ass. After all, if it were actually hyper-realistic, it would have the same texture as my ass. So it would be the very same if you were to kiss my real ass.
Standing in the darkness where you can only see his face while his head and torso faded into black, and when I say hyper-realistic, I mean he looked so real you could actually see the lines in his blue fur, as if you could actually feel the fur if you touch the screen.
Hey, so you were using the word hyper-realistic correctly, sort of, because you don't actually try that. Still, I mean, you came a lot closer than most stories that use that word.
His face! Oh God! He had the most horrifying smile I had ever seen. And that's saying something considering I saw the image at the start of the game. His eyes are wide and black, and once again crying blood, which also looked hyper-realistic. And there were 2 small glowing red dots in those black eyes staring right at me, as if staring into my mind.
Demon Sonic thought his powers were malfunctioning when he stared into your mind, but in reality the black void he saw was simply an accurate representation of its contents.
His grin was wide and demonic. It literally stretched to the sides of his face like a Cheshire cat, except Sonic had fangs. Very sharp fangs.
Because cats apparently don't have fangs.
Much like the werehog's teeth, except more vicious looking, somewhat yellowish, and from the look of it, he had stains of blood and small bits of flesh on his lips and fangs as if he ate some animal. I stared at that gruesome image for a good 30 seconds, never taking my eyes off it.
You may be the current world champion of staring contests, but I shall claim that title as my own.
I felt as if he was actually looking at me, smiling at me, ... That face. It took just 10 seconds for it to etch itself into my brain for good. Then the screen flickered with red static again 3 times, and on the 3rd time I heard the Kefka laugh, except this time it sounded distorted, demonic even.
Didn't you say it was distorted before?
I went back to the image again, except this time there was the text again, though it was messed up. But it was pretty much one of the most horrifying things I've looked at since I had this game. I am God!
Ooh, spooky!
It was when I read that message while looking at Sonic when it hit me. I realized right there and then, this Sonic was a monster. A pure, evil, sadistic, all-powerful, nightmarish, demented monster. And all of his victims, including Tails, Knuckles, Robotnik, and possibly Kyle, are just his little toys, and the game is the very gateway into his chaotic, nightmarish world and the very hell his victims are trapped in. Suddenly, in an actual split second.
Not one of those fake split seconds you buy at the Walmart these days.
I screamed as Sonic lunged at the screen, screeching loudly with his mouth wide open to an unnatural length, revealing nothing but a literally spiraling abyss.
And then you go next door to Kmart and they only have figuratively spiraling abysses. I mean, good mortis. If I wanted a metaphor, I would go back to my home dimension and visit the abstractivaganza. I like that thing where they let you paint the number 3 pink on your way out.
Of pure darkness, before the red static came again. This time much louder and distorted, so loud that it hurt my ears. I yelled and grabbed my ears as the red static screeched for a good 7 seconds. Then it stopped and showed nothing but black screen.
That's right, everyone. Black screen has recently become a substance.
As I sat there staring at the black screen, one last text came up. Ready for round 2, Tom?
No! No, please, gods, no! No more! No more!
The Kefka laugh, now sounding more clear as if Sonic was right behind me, played again 3 times as I looked at that text in shock and confusion. Then I got booted back to the main menu, and this time the 3rd save file had a TV image of Robotnik in the same tormented state as Tails and Knuckles. Robotnik's skin turned a dull gray, his mustache drooped and had blackened. His glasses broke and blood is coming from them, and he had a mere dead-like expression on his face. I looked at Tails, Knuckles, and Robotnik, and I cried a bit. I pitied them for the agony they're going through. They were forever trapped within the game, forever tormented by that horrid hedgehog, and always will be.
They're characters in a video game. They're not real, at least as far as you know.
Then the computer shut itself off. I couldn't turn it back on no matter what I did. I sat there for maybe 25 seconds, horrified by what had just happened, ... Sonic is the very embodiment of evil. He tortures people who play his game in more ways than one, and then when he gets bored with you, he drags you into the game. Literally drags you to hell, where he can play with you always, as his toy.
BDSM dungeon.
I can't get the game out of my computer. I think it's stuck in there, but at least I managed to turn it back on now. After I sat there for 25 seconds, I heard a voice right behind me, like a whisper. Try to keep this interesting for me, Tom.
Holy crap, is it intentional or something? I'm sorry about all these coughing fits. I'm just allergic to stupid, is all.
I turned around to see where the voice came from, and what I saw made me scream, ... Sitting on my bed, ... Staring right at me, ... Was a Sonic plushie, smiling with bloodstains under its eyes.
Oh, praise Mortis, it's over! That was horrid. One of the worst things I've ever read. There's honestly nothing more to say about it than that. Laura, go ahead and go have some fun.
Alright, thanks.
Don't mention it. Anyways, if you have an awful internet story you'd like me to look at, please suggest it down below. Note that it doesn't have to be a creepypasta, though it does have to be safe for work. I realize that limits your options, but get creative. Oh well, at least I can sit comfortably in the knowledge that I'll never have to read anything related to this pasta ever again. Oh fuck no!